My sister lied about needing hospital money but secretly used it for a vacation with my husband, so I taught them a lesson that shattered their world. I, 26 female, got married to my boyfriend, 28 male, of 3 years around a year ago. We've been fighting a lot lately over money because he's out of a job right now. His company laid off several people due to downsizing 5 months ago, and he happened to be one of them. He did manage to find a job a few weeks back, but it doesn't pay half as well, and we need the money if we want to be able to afford the lifestyle we currently have. I want him to keep looking while working at this place, but he doesn't feel like looking anymore, which is why we've been fighting. I work as well, but I can't take on the responsibility of paying all the bills myself. I don't make that kind of money, and I need help, so we've been fighting over that. I'll admit I've been very snippy, but that's just because most of my paycheck is going into paying the bills, and I haven't been able to save, which is a problem for me, and he just doesn't get it. Anyway, around a week ago, we got into a big fight over the rent the night before his work trip, and he left without even saying goodbye. I was really upset since even if we'd fight, he'd never leave without telling me, so that was a first, and then my day got worse. I'd let my sister Isabel, 23 female, borrow some money for medical bills because she said she twisted her ankle really bad and needed my help. She doesn't live in the same state, so I couldn't go visit her either, but I did send her the money and hoped for the best. This had been a few days before the day my husband left, and I hadn't told him about it. This was also the reason I hadn't been able to make rent on time since I'd lent my sister the money I'd need. I kept that a secret and ended up fighting with my husband, which I now regret. But then that day, a few hours after my husband left, I was going through Instagram and realized that my sister had posted a bunch of pictures from a beach. Her ankle didn't seem twisted in the least because she was running into the sea by herself and posing for every picture without a trace of pain or discomfort on her face. Ankles don't heal that quickly, and I knew instantly that she'd lied to me. And like an idiot, she'd forgotten to block me as well. What's worse was that she'd even added her location, and that's exactly where my husband had gone for his business trip. I was stunned when I realized that not only had my sister lied to me for money, but she'd also managed to somehow land up at the same place as my husband. I got to thinking and decided to take a chance and call my husband's office to request a meeting with him, but the receptionist told me that he didn't work there anymore and had quit just 2 days back. There it was, clear as day. He'd lied to me and gone away on a vacation with my youngest sister, pretending he was on a work trip while I actually did work to pay all our bills, and he blew his money on fancy vacations. I didn't know what I was more upset about, honestly. Once I put 2 and 2 together, I started crying and didn't know when I stopped. I think I must have got nothing done apart from crying and occasionally sleeping during the next few hours. I knew that there was no running away from the truth. They definitely were together. I wasn't going to pretend that this was some coincidence and tried to give them the benefit of the doubt. That wasn't the case, and I was aware of it. It just sucked because I hadn't seen this coming at all. There had been no signs and no way for me to prepare myself mentally for it either. I don't know what had gone wrong. Maybe it was the fighting, but that wasn't my fault, and the worst betrayal was my sister's because I was always ready to do whatever it took to put a smile on her face. And here she was, hooking up with my husband and going on fancy vacations with him, which was funded by my money. The longer I thought about it, the angrier I felt, and by the 4th day, I only wanted to get back at them. I just wanted them to feel as hurt as I was and ruin their lives. I wasn't going to do anything while they were out on vacation but waited for my husband to come back instead. My sister would probably head back home instead, but my husband would have nowhere else to go, so I waited for that entire week. And last night, my husband finally came back home. I'd prepared a feast for him, and when I heard his car pull up in the driveway, I turned out all the lights and lit some candles. I'd already made a path to the table with rose petals. Yeah, I'd put in the work since this was probably going to be our last date night ever. He seemed pleasantly surprised when he entered the house and was even more shocked when he realized that I'd done my hair up the way he liked but I hated it, and was even wearing a dress that he'd bought me while we were dating. I pulled out all the stops, and he was definitely enjoying it. I can't imagine how he was so okay with this after he'd come back from a week-long vacation where he'd done nothing except spend his money on my sister. It was disgusting, but I managed to put on my best smile and try to make him feel at home. I apologized for the fight we'd had before he left, and he forgave me instantly. After some time, we got to having dinner, and he kept complimenting me on the food I'd made. When he got to dessert, I served him my special brownies, and I think he must have had 3 of those. Once he was done, I decided to finally confront him. I showed him the pictures that my sister had posted and asked him how his business trip had been right after I handed him the pictures. He wasn't a stupid guy. He knew exactly what I was talking about but tried to pretend like he didn't. He said his business trip had been pleasant enough but pretended like he didn't understand the relevance of these pictures. That's when I told him that I called his workplace, and I already knew that he'd quit his job. I'd already filed for a divorce as soon as I'd realized that he'd been out there cheating on me and served him with the papers once he was done with dinner. I didn't even wait around to find out what he had to say about any of this and walked out of the house with my already packed bags and drove to a hotel. Then I called my parents up and told them that they needed to stop sending money to my sister immediately. I explained the situation to them, and they were just as shocked as I was and said they'd deal with my sister. She just started working and was yet to receive her first paycheck, so I knew that she'd be screwed without the help of my parents. I wish I could fly all the way to where she was and slap the living daylights out of her, but for now, this would have to do. She'd be stranded in a new city with nobody to look out for her because she'd stabbed me in the back, and I guess that would be the best lesson for her. As for my husband, please don't be misled. I didn't just cook him a beautiful dinner and give him one last day to remember. He definitely would remember this, but not for the reasons people would expect. I'd called the brownies I made for him special because they were laced with laxatives, and he'd definitely be sick for a few days. I didn't tell him about it and got rid of all the evidence as well, so I have nothing to worry about. But this morning, I received a call from my husband, and he told me that I needed to pay his hospital bills because that's how sick he'd fallen. Of course, I hadn't intended on sending him to the hospital, but I don't really feel bad for him. He says that he knows I'm the one who caused this, but he can't prove it, so I don't feel threatened either. Maybe if he hadn't spent all his money on a week-long vacation with his sister, he would have been able to cover the medical expenses, or better yet, there would have been no expenses at all. This is completely on him, and I don't feel bad for him at all. Ida for not paying for his trip to the hospital, so I ended up not paying for anything, and he's furious at me, which isn't very surprising, but I've blocked him, so he cannot get to me anymore, and neither am I interested in what happens to him beyond this point. He had it pretty good with me, but now he's going to learn how to be on his own the hard way, just like my sister is. She also tried to get through to me a few hours back, but I didn't respond to any of her calls, so she took to spamming me with texts. Apparently, my parents had told her that they were ashamed of what she'd done and had cut her off entirely. She had to buy groceries today itself because everything had rotted during the 1 week that she wasn't here, and she was accusing me of trying to starve her based on nothing but an Instagram post. I mean, she really can't think I'm that stupid. But I didn't respond to her texts either and even blocked her, so now she has nobody to turn to for help. How she manages to pay for things is on her now. Both my husband and sister had me looking out for them so far, but they've lost me forever now after what they did and the pain they've caused me. They deserve every awful thing that I'm doing to them. People can call me whatever they want, psychotic or evil or heartless, but I don't care. I was the one making all the sacrifices so that they could have what they wanted, and despite that, they decided to screw me over and betrayed me. I'm lucky that my sister had forgotten to block me, or else I never would have found out about any of this either, and the audacity to even ask me for help after they literally cheated on me, as if they're entitled to anything now. I would have even demanded the money that I'd lent my sister for her so-called hospital bills back, but then I'd have to talk to her, and I'm just not interested in doing that. My husband hasn't said anything about the divorce yet though, and even if he does have anything to say, I'm not going to know unless he responds to it legally. He can still email me, and I hope he does that soon because I don't want to waste more of my time staying married to this piece of crap. My lawyer is a friend of mine, so luckily she's not charging much, but he can't even afford one in the first place, so he's in much bigger trouble than I am. I can't wait to find out what he'll do now. My husband ended up having to stay at the hospital for 3 days and racked up a huge bill. I don't know how he managed to pay it off, probably had to ask his parents and friends for help since he couldn't get to me. I found out from a common friend of ours. He hasn't responded to the divorce notice yet, and I think he's going to take his own sweet time now that he can't even afford a lawyer. We haven't spoken since that night, and I intend on keeping it that way. I don't want his apologies or explanations, they're not going to change my mind or the way I feel, and I don't think he's going to apologize either because he did have his chance since I'd only blocked him after he asked me to pay his bills, but he didn't, so I'm not expecting an apology. I just want him not to contest the divorce because I don't want a long drawn-out legal battle or anything of the sort. The longer that goes on, the longer I'll end up thinking about him, and I don't want that. I just want to move on now. Coming to my sister, she ended up going back home to live with my parents after a few days when she realized she couldn't afford to live on her own and waited for her first paycheck to come in because even that wouldn't cover the cost of living in another city. She must have even borrowed money from her friends to pay for the flight ticket since she didn't have enough saved, but my parents weren't willing to take her back in even though she begged them to. My mom told me that it was really difficult to turn her away because in spite of what she'd done to me, she was still their daughter, and they felt like crap telling her to go away again and again while she sobbed and begged them to take her in, but eventually she did go away, and she's probably living with a friend. My mom thinks she's going to come back again and has confessed that the next time she might not be that strong and will probably end up taking her in. I can kind of understand where she's coming from. I'm not a mom, but I can't imagine how difficult it must have been for my parents to abandon their own daughter. I know she'd ruined my marriage, but she's still their daughter. I won't be happy if my parents take her back, but I won't hold it against them either. I've also moved in with a lawyer friend of mine because with my salary, I can't afford to keep living in a hotel. She's been kind enough to let me live rent-free as well. I honestly feel really lucky and thankful because even though my sister and husband didn't give a damn, I still have some good friends who have my back. So my husband has still not responded to the divorce notice. It's been almost 2 weeks now, and I still haven't heard back from him. I don't know what exactly he's doing and what's taking him so long, but I can't be bothered to find out either. After all, he's the one who stands to lose everything if he doesn't respond in time, so it'll work out just fine for me anyway. To be honest, I have no idea what he's been up to, and neither do any of his friends. I'd already been back to the house twice by now to collect some things that I'd left behind, and both times I'd been nervous about running into him, but I didn't. He hadn't changed the locks after I'd left, so I could enter easily, and I think he's moved out or something since the house doesn't even feel like it's been lived in for a couple of days. There's dust on every surface, and even though most of the things remain untouched, I noticed that a lot of things were missing. His closet looked considerably emptier, and the fridge was totally empty. I don't know where he is, but he's probably not living at our house. I mean, it worked out well for me since I didn't have to see him when I went back to collect my things. And for those of you who've been asking, no, my sister had never had any behavioral problems while we were growing up. She'd always been a sweet kid and a great sister to me, so I was completely blindsided by what she'd done, and so were my parents. I don't even know how they got together in the first place or whether they're still on talking terms right now or not, but one thing's for sure, nobody could have seen this coming. There had been no signs at all, and I don't have any proof as of now that my husband had been cheating apart from the Instagram post from my sister, but I'm not too worried about the proof because I know I'll manage to find out. And worst comes to worst, I'll convince my parents to make my sister confess about their affair and give me the proof I need. Yeah, they took her back, by the way. For the record, I'm not mad at my parents, and neither am I disappointed that they let her come back to them. If anything, I'm thrilled since this means they can control her, and by extension, so can I. So I'll definitely be using this to my advantage during the divorce proceedings. I've already told my parents to keep an eye on her and keep tabs on her social media activity. If my parents and my sister are still in touch, then well, he'll be done for. I've been really busy with work and my divorce, so I haven't had the time to do much else really. Yeah, it's finally happening. I finally heard back from my husband 2 weeks back, and he had the good sense not to contest the divorce. We're about to commence the settlement negotiations in a few days, and I'm preparing myself mentally to come face to face with him for the first time since that last night that we saw each other. We haven't spoken or met since then, and I know it's going to be really weird and intimidating, but my friend is helping me keep my cool. I just have to let her do all the talking, and I'm good to go. My soon-to-be ex-husband has also been talking a lot of crap about me on social media to gain sympathy from everyone else. He's been telling people about how I basically poisoned him and then refused to pay for his medical expenses and that I even ran away with a lot of his money, which is simply not true. The opposite of that is what happened. I found out from our friends about this since I blocked him and wouldn't have known otherwise, but I didn't respond to whatever he said and only made sure that I collected the screenshots. Apparently, he's moved to a much smaller apartment and is sharing with a roommate because he can't afford the rent otherwise. I don't know what his job situation is or how he's affording a lawyer, but I guess he has one now, which is why he's flying so high. He doesn't even know what I can do to destroy him, so I'm just laughing it all off. He can talk crap about me all he wants, but he doesn't know that my sister has sent me all the screenshots and proof I need to completely annihilate him in court and make sure this divorce ends up being the worst experience of his life. My parents were able to bring my sister under control and forced her to send all the proof I needed to establish that he'd been having an affair and had been skimping out on bills due to this very reason. I was devastated to find out that this had been going on for months now. Their affair had started back when my husband had first learned that his company was going through downsizing, and my sister claims that everything had been stressing him out, which is why he started venting to her, and slowly they started catching feelings for one another. All those weekend work trips that he'd taken were to see her, and even after he'd lost his job, he didn't tell me for weeks and pretended that he still had to go on business trips while I slaved away at my job just to be able to put food on the table. I was truly disgusted not just by my husband but by my sister as well. The girl here had been my best friend growing up, and she hadn't even thought twice before hurting me and ruining my marriage. I couldn't believe that she had not only been capable of doing this to me but had been hiding it for so long. Every time we'd speak, we'd have a good time, and she'd pretend to have my back even when I'd tell her about all the money problems and fights that I've been having with my husband. Meanwhile, she'd been sleeping with him this entire time. I don't feel bad about making my parents manipulate her and coerce her into sending me the proof I need. This is the least she could do for me after ruining my marriage, and they hadn't even stopped talking after I'd served him with the divorce papers that night. Their affair had continued, and he'd even promised her that he'd rescue her from whatever trouble she was in as soon as he had the money, but then, as we all know, he couldn't make that happen. He only stopped speaking to her a few weeks back. I remain puzzled about the exact reasons behind his decision to cut ties with her, yet it's evident that my sister was deeply shattered by the breakup. I suspect that's what ultimately pushed her over the edge, leading her to crumble emotionally and decide to assist me with the divorce proceedings. It's a small consolation, but at least now she's providing the evidence I need. On a brighter note, my attorney has assured me that our case is solid and airtight. We're in a strong position with no major concerns looming ahead. This brings me a sense of relief amid all the chaos. Additionally, my parents have shared their plans to push my sister towards securing employment as quickly as possible. They don't want to be stuck footing her bills indefinitely, which makes perfect sense given the circumstances. Reflecting on her situation, she appears profoundly downcast based on what they've described to me. In another time, I might have mustered some pity for her plight, but honestly, she's reaped exactly what she sowed through her own choices. She had every opportunity to steer clear of that illicit relationship and forge her path independently, without dragging others into her mess. But no, she chose to disrupt my world so callously, and now the tables have turned. I'll ensure she faces the consequences in kind. It's nothing more than the universe's way of balancing the scales, pure karma at work. Therefore, I find no compelling justification to harbor sympathy for her. She's the architect of her own downfall. That said, as the initial surge of rage begins to ebb away, I'm starting to grapple with a quieter sorrow directed inward. With the end of this chapter drawing near, I can't stop my mind from wandering to those lingering what-ifs. Could our marriage have truly flourished under different conditions? Perhaps if the financial strains hadn't escalated, or if the arguments had been fewer, things might have unfolded differently. I recognize the futility in dwelling on such hypotheticals at this juncture, especially since the divorce is already in motion and irreversible. Yet, these thoughts persist unbidden, creeping in during quiet moments, forcing me to confront the fragility of what we once shared. It's like an unwelcome echo of happier times, reminding me of the laughter, the shared dreams, and the intimacy that now feels so distant. Truthfully, a part of me aches with longing for both of them, despite the betrayal that shattered everything. There are days when I catch myself yearning for a return to the innocence of our past, the uncomplicated joy of family bonds with my sister and the comforting routine of life with my husband before deceit poisoned it all. Those memories surface unexpectedly, painting vivid pictures of holidays spent together, late-night conversations filled with trust, and the simple security of knowing I wasn't alone in facing life's challenges. But I force myself to recognize that indulging in these nostalgic reveries could weaken my resolve at a critical time. Vulnerability isn't an option right now. I need to maintain my strength to navigate the legal hurdles ahead without faltering. Expanding on this internal struggle, I've come to realize how deeply intertwined our lives were. My sister wasn't just a sibling, she was my confidant, the one I'd turn to for advice or a shoulder to lean on during tough spells. And my husband, well, he was my partner in every sense, the person who understood my quirks and ambitions. Losing them both feels like a double wound, one that heals slowly and leaves scars. Yet, I remind myself of the facts, the lies, the secret rendezvous, the financial deceit that eroded our foundation. It's easy to romanticize the past when anger fades, but reality demands I stay grounded. To cope, I've been channeling my energy into practical steps, organizing documents for the lawyer, focusing on my job to rebuild financial stability, and even exploring new hobbies to fill the void. Friends have been invaluable, offering distractions and support that remind me life continues beyond this turmoil. In the end, I know there will be ample opportunity for reflection once the dust settles. For now, though, my priority is to suppress these softening emotions, bury them deep until the divorce is finalized. By concentrating solely on the process, attending meetings, reviewing settlements, and envisioning a fresh start, I can push forward without distraction. I'm optimistic that, in time, this resolve will pay off, leading to closure and perhaps even a stronger version of myself emerging from the ashes. Hopefully, everything will align as it should, allowing me to move on without regrets.